Presented by Caltech.
As a typical try-hard, high-achieving student in a small high school, there was only one thriving habitat you would belong in: a student council. Top students in the past followed this path and fared well. So when junior year came for me, I thought, why not? It could be fun. Boy, was I wrong. The election by student council works like this. There's a first round where the whole class would make a vote, and it would pick 3 delegates from each grade. Now, the second round that shows who the president and vice president was based on those 12 delegates only that were selected from the first round. I was a first-time delegate and a junior. Somehow got like the vice president and was so excited. But then I would soon discover that the organization was just a dark and sad sheep farm. A lot of people who join student council for the first time imagine it to be this magical place with rainbows and unicorns where motivated student representatives could take student complaints and create real change by appealing to administration. What I witnessed instead was almost the exact opposite: a puppet organization with very little power over things. In fact, the elected delegates often took on a defeatist, we can't do this attitude over most of the student complaints and suggestions. To be fair, in defense on the council delegates, students are often not the most reasonable entities. Some of the proposed changes, from having more facilities, more libraries, and even radical demands to fire student teachers. I'm looking at you, Mr. Henry. We're totally out of our realm of control. So seeing a lack of results from their demanding complaints, students in general just stopped approaching the council altogether. And the situation stabilized into a depressing state of disconnection between the delegates and the very students they represented. In fact, a lot of students believed that student council was just a way to embellish the transcripts of high-achieving students rather than giving the rest of the students a voice. The administration were anything but alarmed by my addition. Just another docile sheep. They have many reasons to believe so, but I admit I can be very stubborn and rebellious if I were to pursue something I thought was right. I was in the student council and became somewhat frustrated by this negative reputation, and I was determined to eliminate this stigma and reestablish the trust and communication between the students and the delegates. I took a certain pride and even an incredible joy in imagining myself to become this knight in shining armor that would rescue my school from this crisis. And then I prepared for the elections. Now, so for the first round of elections, I over-elaborately gave a speech on the inherent structural flaws that distorted communication and ways to remedies about administration. It seemed to work pretty well. I've received overwhelming majority of votes from my classmates who were all full of hope and excitement. Our morale was high. Then comes then all that's left is the second round election for presidency. I suffered a crushing defeat. It turned out my opponent targeted the 9th and 10th grader delegates, gave them special favors, bribes, and even used his underclass girlfriend to move votes in his favor. Just like a real election, hey. I remember the next few weeks just being pure hell. I mean, walking down the hallway and feeling all eyes looking at me, staring at me at what must have been looks of mockery and disappointment. But probably they were just sympathy. And I remember feeling my friends still comforted me, but I still felt like I let them down. And I was overcome by defeat, self-blame, bitterness, resentment. But worst of all was just that feeling of giving my whole ambition that it was okay. In my darkest moments, I made a realization that failing to become president should not have been the final verdict to my ambition. I would only have been defeated if I let my perception of it as failure inhibit the change I wanted to create. Indeed, the election did not overcome me. The feeling of defeat came from within. It came from my deep insecurities of being seen as incompetent and a fear to face administration without sense of security provided by the president position. So I became grateful for this failure because it redefined my perception of failure and self-worth and gave me a stronger sense of determination, much less willing to go down without putting up a good fight. In response, I made a whole new committee called the Student Relations Committee, dedicated to collecting student polls and collecting student complaints. That was when I realized that real power to make change actually lies in these community leaders who did directly interact with the students instead of the hovering head puppet figure of the student council president. But this newfound power put me on everyone's radar. I conducted polls on teaching quality, and teachers who were rated highly were overjoyed and they loved it. But those who didn't screamed to administration, "Who is this guy? What he's doing? What he is doing is not right." Using student polls, I was also able to get admin to reverse some of the unpopular decisions. And as almost in fear of a similar character like me appearing again, I've heard that this year they increased a lot of restrictions on what a mere student could do after I left. And what I perceive as a testament to my success in the first official student council meeting this year, the first thing the head admin said was, in a very passive-aggressive, pretentious tone, I'm sure we're all too familiar with. "Yeah, Orlando, he was doing too much." In my school's sheep farm that is student council, students were just expected to obey, yet I, a typical DAB student with a goody two-shoes reputation, a perfect match, it seemed, underwent the most rebellious personal transformation. And I realized that the illusion of failure becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy only if you let it to. Thank you.